Chapter 43, Down in the Hole, 2004. It took more than a year to get there, but Mondo at last settled into a dropout yard to his liking. After the van delivered him to Delano, he'd requested a facility close to home. Salinas Valley State Prison was his first pick because the town of Soledad was only 22 minutes from Salinas. He was surprised to learn that California prison officials no longer cared about keeping inmate family ties intact. In fact, they seemed to want the opposite. Mondo was sent all the way to Los Angeles County, where he was surrounded by Sureño dropouts and forced to watch the Dodgers instead of the Giants and 49ers on local TV stations. Lancaster was a scorched prison in the Mojave Desert, but worse, it was a 6-hour drive from Salinas. If he stayed there, he'd never see his son. He took matters into his own hands and got a transfer the only way he knew how. This one big jerk in his building kept trying to bait him into a fight. Mondo waited until the moment was right to have it out with the guy. When they finished, the jerk was in the infirmary and Mondo had cuts on his knuckles so deep they would heal into permanent scars. He was sentenced to 6 months in the administrative segregation unit, that familiar place known to the guards as ADSE and to everyone else as the Hole. He nearly went insane. It was a prison within the prison where you had no sense of day or night, and you had to try to sleep while the screams of the J-Cats, those who were already crazy, went unheeded by guards. ADSEG at Lancaster made his distant memories of Tamarack and YA seem like days of freedom. At first, he thought he'd been left in his cell for too many days without seeing a guard, but he had no sense of how much time had passed. He was alone, more alone than he'd ever been, and he was unable to control his mind. He believed he could die and no one would notice for weeks. They finally set him up with another guy. The prisons were so crowded that even in solitary, you had a cellmate. When weeks had passed and they'd gotten the hang of the place, he heard the usual screams from the tier below. At first, he assumed it was just another J-Cat, but he quickly sensed that these cries were different, terrifying. The screamer, a small-time petty offender named Eddie, howled and begged for help for an hour or two while guards just walked on by. Inmates yelled, "Man down," and still the COs walked past without looking in. When the new shift came on, a few guards finally peered into the cell. Eddie was dead. Inmates said his cellie had smashed his head on the cement floor and then cut his throat with the cord. A few days later, Mondo was allowed to visit the law library. Guards escorted him past Eddie's cell and he saw that it was taped off as a crime scene. Blood was spattered across the walls and ceiling, and the floor was covered with more drying, stinking blood. Clusters of flies danced on the stains. Mondo heard a guard say the COs fucked up by not responding to Eddie's screams. He wrote a letter to a reporter about the dangerous conditions in the hole and included the guard's name, but the letter never arrived. It was as if the hole had swallowed everything. He was free of that hell now. After his ADSEG term ended, he was transferred out of Lancaster because he officially had an enemy on the yard. It had worked out just as he had hoped. He landed at Pleasant Valley State Prison, only a couple hours away from home, and there he waited for Erica to bring his son. He liked the place, and he'd become hopeful that when his son returned to his life, all would be well. The protective custody yard had a mix of Nuestra Familia, La M, Aryan Brotherhood, and Mara Salvatrucha dropouts, plus a few sex offenders who wouldn't be safe on mainline yards. But there were enough Norteño dropouts from Salinas to make him feel right at home. Being a dropout had become a new kind of brotherhood, one in which you were left to do as you pleased. He coached, pitched, and hit for a prison softball team called the Giants, and they always won big. Boxer and Stalker eventually showed up on his yard. Stalker encouraged Mondo's scholarly side and helped him study for his mail-order college sociology courses. Mondo had a new cellie, a younger homeboy from Salinas. Gil knew Mondo's brother Chinto from way back in the day, and Mondo enjoyed mentoring his less experienced friend in the ways of the world. They shared memories of their active Norteño days, the parties in Salinas, girls they had. Gil told Mondo the story of him and his homegirl Crystal, how they'd been an item for a year or so. He remembered how he was surprised by her forwardness when she insisted he come home with her to spend the night. He said sure, but he admitted he was nervous about sneaking into her parents' house. Sure enough, he got caught before he could slip away in the morning. Her dad was furious and had words with him. Gil was embarrassed and told him, "Sir, I don't mean any disrespect. Believe it or not, it wasn't my idea." He remembered thinking Crystal just wanted to be loved. She wasn't desperate or anything, she just wanted love, enough to withstand her father's anger. The dad seemed impressed with Gil's courteous manner, and after that was okay with him being around, though he didn't approve of the young man's gangster style. Crystal was older than Gil, like 18 or something, and she had a baby son. Gil didn't mind that she had a kid, and he liked the fact that she was a good mother. Yeah, she could go out and have fun, but she always made sure her mom would watch the baby, and she was heavy into her family's Nazarene church. Gil, of course, was young and crazy and kept right on gangbanging. Crystal wasn't into all that, but after a while, he noticed she started to imitate his style, acting tough, more like a gang girl. He sensed that she wanted badly to fit in, but it wasn't just her, he thought. Eventually, he fell deeper into the life, got involved in some crimes, and hooked up with another girl. At Pleasant Valley State Prison, he was surprised to hear that the sweet girl next door with the big heart had not only gotten over him, she'd hooked up with the general. Gil was shocked when he heard the gossip about Crystal's choice of husband. If her dad once worried that Gil was too much of a gangbanger for his daughter, he must have blown a gasket over the man who followed. The newspapers were passed around the dropout yard. Slain woman was a wife of a gang leader. Gil struggled to make sense of the terrible news, and Mondo did what he could to make him feel better, even as Mondo grew frustrated with his own personal life. Letters from family and friends were few, and visits fewer. Mondo and his last girlfriend broke up, and he wrote a long poem to Erica, apologizing for all the pain he'd caused. His son's 4th birthday passed, and again, he had only photos to remind him. He waited, and still his family did not come.